Hi everybody, welcome to GTCoding. This is the complete video of building this blog homepage using Next.js 15, Shadcn, and the latest version of Tailwind CSS, which is v4. And we'll also add some subtle animations to this using a library called Motion.dev. So this is how the homepage looks. And this also has light and dark modes. So if I click on this button, we can see that this is the light mode. And this website is also completely responsive. So if I decrease the width of the browser window, this is how it will look on tablets. And this is how it will look on smartphones. So on smartphones, we have this hamburger button. And if I click on that, we have these menu items displayed over here. And we can click outside to close the menu items. And let's scroll down, and this is how it will look on smartphones. So in this video, we will design this completely from scratch, and I will also show you how to deploy this online on Vercel for free. And I will also leave the link of the source code in the description of this video. So let's get started. Now, before starting with our project, the first thing you need to do is have Node.js installed on your system. So just go to the website nodejs.org and click on download, and you can download and install Node.js for your operating system. And once you install Node.js, you can go to your terminal. So here I have opened this folder called blog in VS Code, and you can just open the terminal of VS Code. So you can just go over here to view and click on terminal. And here if you just tap node -version, you should see the node version over here. And if you just tap npm -version, you should see the npm version over here as well. And once you install Node.js, you can just execute these commands, and you should see this output something like this. And once you see this, you'll be able to proceed with our tutorial. So I'll just clear this. Now in this video, we will set everything up. So the first thing we will do is we'll create a Next.js application. So for that, you can just tap npx create next app at latest. And since we are creating this in this current folder, we can just type dot over here. And if you want to create a new folder, you can just add the name of the folder over here. But I'll just type dot and press enter. And sometimes you'll see this prompt, you can just press enter. And here we have some options that we need to select. So we will use TypeScript. So let's press yes. And we'll also use ESLint. We'll also use Tailwind CSS for the styling. And we'll just select no for the source directory. And for the app router, we'll select yes. And we'll select yes for turbo pack as well. And we'll just select no for customizing the import alias. So now we can see that all the dependencies are being installed. And here we can see our Next.js project has been created. Let's go ahead and open this by typing npm run dev. And here we can see it runs on localhost 3000. Let's open this. And this is how our app looks right now. So this is the basic default design of Next.js. Now I'll just go ahead and walk you through these files and folders over here. Now here we can see we have this file called tsconfig.json, and if I open that, we can see that there are some rules for TypeScript over here. We don't need to make any changes in this. And the next one is readme.md file, and this is a basic readme file which gets automatically created by Next.js when we set up the project. You can also go ahead and change the contents of this. And the next one is this file called post.css.config.mjs, and this is where we have the Tailwind CSS setup. And then we have the package.json file over here where we have all the scripts and the dependencies of our application displayed. So here we can see we are using React 19 version and Next.js 15 version, which is the latest versions. And then we have this package log.json file, and we don't need to change anything in this. Then we have the next config.ts file. Here we can add some configurations for our app. Right now, we don't need to do anything in this. We will add some code over here later when we need to use images in our website. And then we have this next env.dts file, and we don't need to do anything in this. This is automatically generated by Next.js. And then we have some ESLint config over here. And then we have the git ignore file where we can specify which of these files and folders we don't want to push to our GitHub. And then we have this public folder where we can store our assets. We have the images and all those things can be stored over here. And then we have this folder called node modules, and In this, we have all the dependencies of our application stored, and this is also automatically handled by Nextjs. And then we have this .next folder, and this is also handled by Nextjs. We don't need to touch it. The majority of our time will be spent in this app folder, where we have this page.tsx file. This is our homepage file that we see over here. So if you go back, this is the page that is displayed over here. So if we go ahead and remove all of this, and if I just go ahead and return an h1 and let's type welcome, I'll just go ahead and remove the import of the image. And if I go back, we can see that welcome is displayed over here. So this is the starting point of our application. And then we have this globals.css file where we have all our CSS for our application. And then we have this favicon over here. And we also have this file called layout.tsx. And this is where we can import the fonts and also add the metadata. So here we can see we have the title and the description. And this is where we have the HTML tag, the body tag, and all these things over here. And here we can add things like the navbar and the footer and all those things, which will be repeated throughout our application. So this is basically how our Next.js application looks. Now, while we are here, let's also go ahead and install Shadcn. So Shadcn is basically a component library. So here we can see there are different types of components, and we can use this in our website, and the source code of these components will be stored in our application itself. So in this way, we can go ahead and customize these components to our needs. So let's go ahead and install this. Let's click on get started. You can go to this website called ui.shadcn.com, and let's pick our framework, which is Nextjs. And here we can see we have this command called npx shadcn at latest init. Let's copy this and let's go back to our VS Code. Let's create a new terminal and let's paste the command over here. Let's press enter. And here we have some options that we need to select. I'll just select neutral. And with that, Shadcn has been installed in our project. And if you go over here, we can see that we have a new file called components.json. And if I open that, we have all these Shadcn specific properties displayed over here. And we also have some changes made in the global.css file. So all this code has been added by Shadcn. Now let's go ahead and check whether Shadcn is working. So let's go to our page.tsx file and let's load a button component. So for that, let's go back to Shadcn and let's search for a button. So you can just click on this search input and let's type button. Let's select this component. And here we have some preview and some code, but let's go ahead and take a look at the installation command. So here we can just type npx shadcn at latest add button. So let's copy this and paste it over here. So I'll just press enter. And now we can see that we have a new folder created over here called components. And if I open that, we have a new folder called UI. And in the UI, we have this button.tsx file. And if I open that, we have all the code of the button displayed over here. We have different variants and all those things. And all these are Tailwind CSS code. So now let's go ahead and use this button. Let's go back to our page.tsx file. Let's wrap all of this inside a div. And let's go ahead and below this h1, let's type button. And let's import this from components UI button. And here let's type testing. Let's go back. And this is how it looks. Let's go ahead and restart our server. Let's type npm run dev. And let's go back and reload this page. And now we can see we have this button over here. So this is the Shadcn button. We can go ahead and check out different variants. So if we just type variant, and if I just select, let's select destructive. And if I go back, here we can see we have this red colored button. So with that, we can confirm that Shadcn is working and also Tailwind CSS is working. So if I just go ahead and type class name and text for Excel, here we can see that Tailwind CSS is working. And now the last thing we will do in this video is set up our fonts. So if you go back to our original website, we can see that there are two fonts in our website. We have this Playfair display font and also this font called Inter. So let's go back. Let's go to the layout.tsx file and let's set up our fonts. So here we can see that there is an option in Nextjs to import fonts from Next Font Google. So let's import Inter and Playfair display from here. So let's delete this. And let's type Inter and Playfair display. And next we need to go ahead and create constants for the fonts over here. So let's delete these two. and let's type const inter. Let's set it equal to inter, and in that we need to pass some options. So we have subsets. Let's set it to Latin, and we also need to set up a variable. Let's set it to --font inter. So here we need to change this to inter, and with that we have set up our inter font. Let's also go ahead and set up playfair display. So let's type const playfair, I'll just call it playfair, equals playfair display, and here let's pass subsets. Let's add Latin inside this array, and let's also add a variable, and let's call it --font playfair. And here let's also go ahead and change the metadata. So let's type writing that resonates, a modern blog, and for the description let's go ahead and type insights on tech, design and creativity from a thought leader. Right now here in our body we need to pass the font variables. So we have inter, so let's type inter, and also playfair, so let's type playfair. Now let's go to our globals.css file, and here let's add the fonts. So right now we can see that we have font sans and font mono. Let's change font sans to variable which we created called font inter, and let's create another CSS variable called font serif, and here let's type font playfair. And now we can go ahead and use font sans and font serif in our application. So if you go back to page.tsx file, and here if I just type font sans, and if I go back to our application, and if I check out the font, we can see that it is inter. And if I just go ahead and change this to font serif, if I go back, we can see that it is playfair display. So this is basically how we can set up font in our Next.js website. In this video, we will design the navbar of our website. If you go to our source code, here we can see that this is our homepage right now. So what we will do is inside the components folder, let's create a new file called navigation.tsx. Now you can name this file anything you want. Now for now, I'll just go ahead and export default function, and let's call it navigation. And here I'll just return a div, and let's type navigation over here. And let's go back to our page.tsx file, which is the main home page. And here instead of this h1 and button tag, I'll just go ahead and import the navigation component that we just created. So I'll just type navigation, and I'll just import it from @components navigation. So let's self-close this, and I'll just remove this button import from here. And if you go back to our website, here we can see that navigation is being displayed over here. Right now, let's go ahead and start designing this navigation component. So the first thing we will do is we'll create a file with the name of constants.ts, and we'll store all these nav items inside that file. So let's go to a lib folder, and let's create a new file called constants.ts. Let's change this to ts. And here, let's go ahead and export a const called nav items, and let's set it equal to an array. Now in this array we will have several objects. So we will have the name. So the name will be home for the first one. So let's type home over here, and the next one is the href, which is the link. So the home page is /, and let's create one more object, and here we need to have name, and let's set it to categories. And in the href we need to type / categories, and then let's go ahead and type name, and next one is about. So let's type about over here, and href will be / about, and then lastly we have contact. So let's type name, contact, and href / contact. So these are going to be the nav items, and we're going to loop through all these nav items and display them in our navbar. So in this way, when you separate your data into multiple pieces, you'll be able to make changes easier later. So for example, if you want to add a new nav item here, then you can just go ahead and create a new object, and it will be added to your navbar with the correct styling. So now let's go to our navigation component, and let's go ahead and delete this div, and let's return a nav. So in this nav, let's go ahead and add some class names. So first of all, we'll make it sticky, and I'll just add some text over here, navigation. Let's go back, and this is how it looks. So let's add some classes. Sticky, which means that when we scroll down, it will stay at the top. And let's also add some more class names. So let's set the top to 0, and let's set the z index to 50 so that it is above all the other elements of our website. And let's set the background color to bg background /80, which is the opacity. So if you hover over this, we can see that we have the actual CSS being displayed over here. Now if you go back to our globals.css file, here we can see that we have these variables over here, and if you scroll down, we have this background over here. So this is what is used in our navigation component when we use this bg background class. And let's go ahead and add a backdrop blur md, which will have this background blur effect. When we scroll down, here we can see that we have this text being displayed slightly like a glass effect. And then we'll go ahead and add a border. Let's type border B. So border B will add a border over here at the bottom. And for the border, let's type border 50. So this will be the border color. So if you go back over here to the globals.css file, here we will have the border displayed. So if we scroll down, here we can see we have the border. Now if you just go ahead and change this to, for example, this red color right here. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. And if I just restart our server, and now we can see we have this red color for the border. So in this way, we can go ahead and change the colors of the borders and all these things over here. And we'll make changes to these colors as we move on with our tutorials. So here, let's go ahead and bring it back to the previous color. And now let's go ahead and create a div inside this nav. For this div, let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type class name. Let's set the max width to 7XL, which is like 1280 pixels. And let's go ahead and set the margin left and right to auto. So MX auto. Let's set the padding left and right to 4. And for larger screens, let's go ahead and type SM, which is greater than the smaller screen size. So let's type SM : padding left and right of 6. And for even larger screens, let's type padding left and right of 8. And now if you go ahead and type something over here, if you go back here, we can see we have the correct max width over here. And now we need to have two elements over here. We need to have this logo on the left side and these nav menu items on the right side. So for that, let's go ahead and create a div inside here. And let's add some class names over here. So let's type flex to bring the items one next to the other. Let's type justify between so that both the items are to the extreme left and right sides. And let's also type items center so that they are centered vertically. And let's also set the height to 16. And this is how it looks. So if you go back to our original website, if I change this into the light mode, this is how our navbar looks. Now let's go ahead and create the logo. So here inside the div, let's create another div and let's give it some class names, and let's type flex shrink 0. And in that, let's go ahead and create an h1. Let's type resonance over here. Now for this logo, let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type class name. Let's type text XL for a larger text. Let's type font serif for the Playfair display font. Let's type font bold and text foreground, which is a color. So this is how it looks right now. So with that, we have styled our logo. And now let's go ahead and display these nav items on the right side. So let's go ahead and go outside this div and let's create a comment. I'll just type desktop navigation. And here for the logo, I'll just create a comment. I'll just type logo. And here for the desktop nav, let's go ahead and create a div. And we will loop through all the nav items. So the nav items are inside lib constants. So let's type curly braces nav items. And let's import it from lib constants. And let's type dot map to loop through all these nav items. So I'll just call each of these items item. And here let's create an arrow function. And let's return a link. So let's type link and let's import link from next link. Now in this link, let's go ahead and include the item dot name. So if you go back to our constants, here we can see we have the name and the href. So here in this link, we need to add the name over here, and in the link we need to have an href property. So let's type href and let's set the href to item dot href, which we get from the constants. And let's also add a key because this is a map. So for the key, I'll just type item.name because the name is unique for each of the items. And now if you go back here, we can see that all the nav items are displayed over here. And if I change anything inside this, it will be reflected over here. So now let's add some styles. So here for the div, let's tap class name, and let's tap hidden for smaller screens. And for medium screens and larger, let's tap display of flex and items to the center and space x8. So it will have spacing between the elements horizontally. So this is how it looks. Now for each of these links, let's add some styles. So here for the link, let's add some class names over here. So let's tap class name. Let's tap text small, font medium for the font weight. And for the text color, let's tap text muted foreground. And all these colors are coming from this globals.css file. So here we can see we have foreground color over here. And when we hover over the text, we need to have text foreground. And let's add a transition for the colors. And let's tap duration of 200 milliseconds. Now let's go back, and this is how it looks. So if you hover over this, we can see that the color changes. And now let's go ahead and update the colors of our globals.css file so that we have the correct colors in our application. So let's go to our globals.css file, and here let's make some changes. First of all, we have the background color and it is set to white. And for the dark version, we need to have a different color. So here for the dark background, let's change the colors over here. So I'll just add the color of our website. You can change this to whatever you want. So I'll just have 0.1371, 0.036, 258.5. So this is a different type of color code. It is OKLCH. You can also use RGBA and different color styles, but by default it is using OKLCH. And then for the border, here we can see we have this color, and let's change the color a little bit. So here let's go ahead and tab 0.929, 0.0126 and 25553. And let's update it for the dark version as well. So here for the border, let's go ahead and change this color to 0.28, 0.0369, 260. And then we have the foreground color. So here for the foreground, let's go ahead and change the value to 0.1371, 0.036, 258.5. And for the dark mode, let's change the foreground color to 0.9838, 0.0035, 247.86. And let's quickly change the other colors as well. So we have muted foreground. And for this, I'll just go ahead and change the color to 0.5547, 0.0407, 257.4. And here for the dark version, let's go ahead and change the muted foreground to 0.7107, 0.0351 and 256.8. Now we need to add other colors as well, but we will do that later when we create the other components. For now, we just want these colors. Now we don't need to have commas for these values, so I'll just remove all the commas. Alright, so with that we have updated our colors, and now let's go ahead and save this, and let's also restart our server. And let's go back to our website and reload. And now we can see we have the correct colors for our nav bar. So if I hover over this, we can see we have the correct colors. And with that, we have completed designing the nav bar of our website. Now this is how our website looks right now. We need to add the theme toggle button over here on the right side in our nav bar. Now if you go to the Shadcn website, you can go to ui.shadcn.com, and if I go to docs and if I click on dark mode and let's select Nextjs, here we can see we have the guide to set up dark mode for our website. So the first thing we need to do is install Next themes. So let's copy this. Let's go back to our VS Code and let's bring up the terminal, and let's paste it over here. Let's press enter and let's go back. And the next thing we need to do is we need to create a file called themeprovider.tsx, and we need to copy this code over here. So let's copy this code from here. Let's go back to our source code and let's go to the components folder, and here let's create a new file, and let's call it themeprovider.tsx, and let's paste the code over here. And let's go back, and the next thing we need to do is we need to add the theme provider to the root layout. So I'll just go ahead and copy this theme provider code from here. Let's go back to our website. Let's go to the layout.tsx file and let's paste it just inside the body tag. So here I'll just paste the theme provider and let's bring the children inside the theme provider and let's import this theme provider. So here let's go ahead and type import theme provider from components theme provider. And here we can also see that we need to add suppress hydration warning to remove some unwanted errors. So let's copy this. Let's go back and inside the HTML, let's go ahead and paste it over here. And let's go back to our documentation, and the next thing we need to do is add the theme toggle button. So for that, let's go back to our components, and here let's create a new component called theme toggle.tsx, and I'll just go ahead and export default function theme toggle, and let's return for now just a div with the text theme toggle, and let's import this in our navigation. So let's go to the navigation component, and here just after we display the links, I'll just go ahead and type theme toggle and let's import this over here. So now if you go back to our website, here we can see, if we reload this page, here we can see that we have this theme toggle button over here. Now for the theme toggle button, we will also add a new component from Shadcn called switch. So this is a switch. Let's go back to Shadcn and let's search for switch, and here we have the command to add switch. So let's copy this and let's paste it in our terminal. Let's press enter and let's go back to the theme toggle component, and here the first thing we will do is change this into a client component so that we can have interactivity. So let's type use client over here at the top, and here the first thing we need to do is we need to destructure theme and set theme from use theme. So we have this use theme from the next themes that we just installed earlier. So let's use this, and after that let's return a div. So here in this div, let's go ahead and import a sun icon from Lucid React, and let's also add some class names to this. So let's type backticks. Let's add this inside curly braces, and here let's type height of 4, width of 4, and let's also add transition for colors, and we'll add some more styles over here later, but for now let's go ahead and add some styles to the div. So let's type class name flex items center space x2 for spacing between the elements. Now after this we need to have the switch component from Shadcn. So let's type switch and let's import it from UI switch, and after that we need to have a moon icon. So let's go ahead and type moon and let's import it from Lucid React. Let's copy these class names and paste it over here, and let's go back to our website, and this is how it looks right now. So we can go ahead and toggle this switch, and now let's go ahead and add some class names based on whether the switch is turned on or off. So here let's go ahead and type $symbol curly braces, and here let's type if theme is equal to light. So we are getting the theme from here, from use theme, and if the theme is light, then we need to add this class text yellow 500, or else we need to add this color text muted foreground, and here also we need to add kind of the same style. So I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it over here, and here instead of light we need to type dark, and here for the switch we need to go ahead and type checked, and the switch should be checked if the theme is dark. So we need to type theme equals dark over here. So if the dark theme is activated, then we will have the switch turned on by default, and let's also type on checked. So when we click on the switch, then we need to change the theme. So let's create an arrow function over here. So here I'll just type checked. So we'll get this data from here, and let's type set theme, which we are getting from here, and let's pass the value over here checked. If it is checked, then we need to set it to dark, or else we need to set it to light. So now let's go back and let's reload this page, and we have this error over here. So if I open this, we can see we have some hydration error over here. So let's go back, and for that what we will do is we'll create a const mounted and set mounted, and let's set it equal to use state, and by default we'll set it to false. So let's also import this from React, and we will use a use effect, and let's also import this, and here we'll just go ahead and type set mounted and let's set it to true, and here let's go ahead and see if it is mounted. So let's type if exclamation mounted, then let's go ahead and return something else. So here let's go ahead and type div. Let's copy this class name from here. Let's paste it over here. And inside here, we'll just go ahead and use the sun icon, class name of h4 and width 4. And let's also use the moon icon. And in between over here, let's use the switch. And we'll just set it disabled. So this is how we get rid of that error. So if you go back to our website, and if I reload this, we can see that we don't have any errors. And let's see whether the theme is working correctly. So if I click on this switch, we can see that now we are in the light mode and we have the correct color for the icon. And if I click on it again, we have the dark mode. So everything is working all right. So that's basically how you can set up dark mode in your Next.js website. Right, here's my source code. And first of all, let's go to the components and let's create a new component called hero section.tsx. And here let's go ahead and type export default function. And let's call it hero section. And let's return a div called hero section for now. Let's go back to the page and let's add it over here. And here let's create a main tag and let's add the hero section over here. And let's go back to our website. And here we can see we have the hero section. Now for this main div, I'll also give some class names. So let's type class name of min height of screen, which is the full viewport height. And let's type bg of background. And I'll just remove this navigation component from here. And let's add it to the layout file so that we have the navigation on all the pages of our website. So let's add it over here right before the children. And I'll just import it. And in the page.tsx file, I'll just remove the import of navigation. And now if you go back, here we can see that everything looks all right. Right, now let's start with the hero section. Now if you go back to the original website and if I reload this page, we can see that we have some animation for the hero section. Now for this animation, we're going to use a library called Motion.dev. So you can just go to this website called Motion.dev and you can find the instructions of installing it. So I'll just go over here to docs. Let's go over here to React. And here we can see we have the command to install Motion. So I'll just copy this. Let's go back to our terminal. Let's go to the other terminal and let's paste the command over here and let's press enter. And Motion is being installed. Now here we can see that we have this option of importing Motion from import Motion from Motion React. So let's go back and let's go to the hero section component. I'll just go ahead and import Motion. So let's type import Motion from Motion React. Right, now let's go ahead and return a section. So let's type section. And for the section, we'll just add some classes. So I'll just type class name. Let's type minimum height of 90 viewport height. And let's set it to display of flex, items to the center, and justify content to the center. And let's set the padding left and right to 4. And for greater screens than the smartphone, let's go ahead and type px of 6. And for even larger screens, let's type padding left and right of 8. And let's type overflow hidden, so that we don't have the unnecessary scroll bar. Now inside this, we'll create one more div and let's give it some classes. So let's type class name. Let's add a max width of 7 XL and let's type mx auto to bring it to the center horizontally. And now let's go ahead and type high. And if we go back to our website, here we can see that high is being displayed over here in the center. Right, now let's go ahead and create a div and let's give it some class names and let's set the display to grid. And for larger screens, let's go ahead and type grid columns of 2 and let's add a gap of 12 and items center. And here let's add the left content. So I'll just create a comment left content. Now here let's go ahead and create a div and we need to add animations to this. So for that, what you can do is you can add motion before the element name. So let's type motion.div and now we can add motion animation over here inside this div. So in here, I'll just go ahead and create an h1 and let's go ahead and type writing that. And here we need to add resonates. So let's create a span and let's type resonates over here. And let's add some classes. So here for the h1, let's go ahead and type class name, text 4XL for large text. And for medium or larger screens, let's type text 6XL. And for larger screens, let's tap text 7XL, and let's set the font to serif, font weight to bold, text color to foreground, and let's set the leading to tight. So leading is basically the line height, and the margin bottom of 6. So now if we go back to our website, here we can see that we have this error, and if we go back to our component and if we add a use client over here, then the error goes away. So for using Motion.dev, we need to change this into a client component, but we also have another way to use it in a server component. So let's go back to the documentation. Let's scroll down and let's go to Motion. And here we can see that if we want to use it as server components, we can use this import over here, import asterisk as Motion from Motion React client. So let's go back and do that. Let's go ahead and change this import to import asterisk as Motion from Motion React client. And now if we go back, we can see that we don't have any errors. And for resonates, we need to have a different styling. So here for the span, let's go ahead and type class name text primary, and this is basically a color, so we will create this color in a moment. Let's go ahead and tap italic. So now let's go ahead and create this color primary. Let's go back to the globals.css file, and here we can see we have this primary color. So let's change this primary color over here. Let's change this color to 0.546, 0.2153, 262.87. And let's do it for the dark version as well. So here let's change the color to 0.6232, 0.1879, 259.8. So now let's go back, and now we can see we have the correct color for the element. Right, now let's add the animation. So let's go back to our hero section component, and here for the motion div, let's go ahead and add some animations. So I'll just tap initial. So the initial state should be opacity of 0, Y of 20. Y is basically the top and bottom positions, so it will start from bottom and come up slowly. So let's go back over here and let's add another attribute called animate. So here we need to add what should be the end state. So let's tap opacity should be 1 and Y should be 0. So it will go to the default state. And let's also add transition. So for the transition, let's go ahead and type duration, and let's set it to 0.8. And let's also add class. Let's tap text center, and for large text, let's tap text left. And this is how it looks. Let's reload this page, and now we can see we have this animation. Right, now let's create the paragraph. So let's go outside the h1. Let's create a p tag, and let's copy this text from here. Let's paste it over here. Let's add some classes over here. So let's tap class name text XL. For medium and larger screens, let's tap text 2XL, and let's set the color to text muted foreground, margin bottom of 8, and max width of 2XL. So this is how our text looks right now. Let's reload this page, and we have the animation over here. Right, now let's create this button. So let's go back, and after this paragraph, let's create a motion div. Now let's import the button from UI button, which is a Shadcn component. So in this button, let's go ahead and type this text right here, read the latest post. And we also need to have this arrow right over here. So for that, let's go ahead and use the arrow right icon from Lucid React. Let's also add some classes over here for the icon. Let's type margin left of 2, height of 4, width of 4, transition of transform, and let's type group hover, translate x1. Now since we are using group over here, we can add the hover to the parent. So here for the button, we can just go ahead and type class name group. So now if you go back to our web page, and if I hover over this, we can see that we have the hover effect. And let's go ahead and go back to our button. Let's set the size of the button to LG. And for the button, we can see that we have a little bit of different animation. So let's do that over here for the Motion.dev for the button. Here, let's go ahead and tap initial. Let's set the initial value to opacity 0, Y of 20, and animate. Let's set it to opacity 1, Y of 0, and we need to change the transition. So let's tap transition. Let's set it to duration of 0.8, and we need to add a delay. So let's tap delay. Let's set it to 0.2. So now if we go back and if I reload this page, we can see we have the correct animation for all the elements. Right now, let's go ahead and create the element on the right side, which is this one right here. So for that, let's go back, and this is our left content. So let's go outside this. Let's create a comment called right content. And here, let's go ahead and create a Motion.dev. Let's create a div over here, and we need to create two divs over here for this element. We also have this blur effect over here on the right side. We will use a div for that as well. So let's go ahead and type class name of relative for this, so that we can position the other divs inside here as absolute. So let's create a div, and here let's go ahead and type class name, width of 80, height of 80, bg gradient to br, which is to bottom right, and let's tap from primary color. Let's add an opacity of 20 to another color called secondary 20. And we also need to update the secondary color in the globals.css file. So here let's go and type rounded full. Let's set the blur to 3xl. Let's set it to absolute position. Let's set the top to -10. Let's set the right to -10 as well. And let's create the secondary color over here. So let's go to the globals.css file, and here for the secondary color, let's go ahead and type 0.9676, 0.007, 247.9, and for the dark mode, let's change the secondary color to 0.28, 0.0369, 260. So let's go back, and this is how it looks. We can see that we have this blur effect on the right side. So now let's create the other div. So let's go ahead and create a div over here after this, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, width of 96, height of 96, bg gradient to top left, and here is type from secondary 30 to primary 30, rounded 2xl for rounded corners, and let's tap transform. Let's tap rotate 6, and let's add a shadow of 2xl. So now if you go back to our website, here we can see that our element is being displayed over here, and let's also add animation. So let's go back, and here for the Motion.dev, let's go ahead and tap initial. Let's set it to opacity of 0, scale of 0.8, and let's tap animate. So this will be the end state, and here let's type opacity of 1, scale of 1, and let's add a transition, and here let's type duration of 0.8, and let's add a delay of 0.4, and let's add class name, and by default we will hide it on smaller screens, and for larger screens let's set the display to block. Now let's go back and let's reload this page, and we can see that the animation is working correctly. Let's also take a look at the smaller screens. So let's reduce the width of the browser, and this is how it will look on smaller screens. Let's reduce it even more, and this is on mobile screens. So everything is working all right. So with that, we have completed designing our hero section for our blog website. Right here I'm in my source code, and the first thing we will do is we'll create a component. So let's go ahead and create a component inside the components folder called featured section.tsx, and here let's go ahead and tap export default function. Let's call it featured section, and for now let's go ahead and return a div. Let's type featured section over here, and let's add this to our main page. So here in the page.tsx file, after the hero section, let's go ahead and tap featured section, and let's import it from components featured section. So now if you go back to our page, if you scroll down, we can see that we have the featured section displayed over here. Now if you go back to the original website, we can see that for the featured section we have 4 of these different posts. Now in a real website, we'll get these data from a database, but for now let's go ahead and store this data inside a file called data.ts. So let's go back to our VS Code, and inside the lib folder, let's create a new file called data.ts. And in this we'll create a const called featured posts, and let's set it equal to an array of objects. So in this object we will have the ID. For the first one we'll just have an ID of 1. Then we will have a title, and I will set the title to something like the art of minimalistic design. So I'll just copy this and paste it over here. And the next thing we need to have is the excerpt, and for this we can just go ahead and copy this text from here and let's paste it over here. And the next thing we need to have is the category. So the category should be design over here for this post. So let's tap design, and then we have the date. So let's set the date to the same date over here. I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it over here. And let's also add an image. So for the image, I will just get an image from Pexels. So I'll just get the link of this image. I'll just open this image in a new tab. Let's get this link and let's go ahead and paste it right here. Now in this way we need to add all the posts that we want in featured posts. So I'll just quickly go ahead and do that. Alright, so I have copied and pasted all these posts. We have these 4 posts over here and we have all the details. Now let's go ahead and start working with the featured section component. So here, first of all, let's go ahead and get all the posts. So I'll just type const posts equals featured posts from lib data. So this will give us all the posts and it will be stored inside the posts constant. I'll just go ahead and console.log it over here, and you'll be able to see it. So here we can see all the posts are displayed in the console. Now let's go ahead and return a section. So let's go ahead and type section. And in this section, let's add some classes. So let's type class name. Let's type py, which is padding top and bottom to 20. Let's type padding left and right to 4. And for screens greater than smartphones, let's type padding left and right of 6. And for larger screens, let's type padding left and right of 8. And in this section, we'll create a div. And for this div, let's add some classes. So let's type class name. Let's type max width of 7XL and MX auto for bringing it to the center horizontally. And in this, we need to have these cards. Before that, let's create the heading and this text over here. Now if we reload this page, we can see that we have the animation for this heading and this paragraph as well. So let's add all of that inside a Motion.dev, and let's import Motion over here. So let's type import asterisk as Motion from Motion/React client. And in this Motion div, let's create an h2, and here let's go ahead and tap featured insights. And here we can see we have the featured insights. Let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, and let's set the text to 3XL. Let's type medium and larger. Let's type text 4XL, and let's set the font to serif. Let's set the font to bold and text color to foreground, and let's add a margin bottom of 4. So this is our featured insights. Let's also bring this to the center. So here for the Motion.dev, let's type class name, and let's type text center and margin bottom of 16. So this is how it looks. Right, now let's add some animations over here. So let's tap initial, and let's set it equal to opacity of 0, y of 20, and let's tap animate, and here let's tap opacity of 1, y of 0, and we also need to have transition, and let's set the transition to duration of 0.6. Right, now let's go ahead and create a paragraph, and in this paragraph we will add this text over here. I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it over here, and let's add some classes. So let's type class name, text LG, text muted foreground, max width of 2XL, MX auto for bringing it to the center. So this is how it looks. Right, now let's create another division for displaying these posts. So let's go ahead and create a div. Let's go outside this Motion.dev and let's create a div, and let's add some class names. So I'll just type class name of grid, MD grid calls to. So this will have 2 columns when we are on medium or larger screens, and let's also add a gap of 8. And in here we need to display all the posts. So let's loop through all these posts. So we will use a map. I'll just type curly braces posts dot map, and here let's type post. We'll call each of the posts post, and let's also add an index. And here let's go ahead and return a Motion.dev. So let's add parentheses. Here I'll just type Motion.dev, and in here we will use a card from Shadcn. So first of all, let's install card. You can just open the terminal, and you can just go ahead and type npx shadcn at latest add card. Let's press enter. And I think we also need to add badge, so let's add that as well. So let's tap badge over here. Right now, let's continue with our featured post component. So here, let's use a card from UI card, and in this card we will have a card header. So let's tap card header from UI card, and in this card header we will have a div where we will store the image. So in the source, we'll just go ahead and enter post, and in the post we have an image. So if you go to the data.ts file, here we can see that we have this image over here. So let's go ahead and type post.image, and for the alt, let's go ahead and type post.title, and let's add some classes over here for the image. So I'll just tap class name. Let's tap width of full, height of 48, object fit to cover, transition, transform, and let's tap duration of 300. And when you hover over this, we need to scale the image. So let's type group hover scale 105. Now let's add the group class to this card, so that when you hover over this card, we have this animation. So let's tap class name group, and let's add some more classes. So let's tap cursor of pointer, overflow of hidden, and for hover, let's tap shadow XL, and let's also type transition all, duration of 300, border of 0, BG card 50. So this is the color, and backdrop blur excess, and padding top and bottom of 0. So here we can see we have these images being displayed over here. Now for the card header, let's go ahead and add class name of padding of 0. So just remove all the padding. So this is how it looks. We can see that we have this border radius. Right now, let's add a badge over here for the category. So let's go ahead and type div below the image, and in that we'll add a badge. So this is also a component from Shadcn. So let's import it from UI badge, and here we'll just type post.category, and let's add some classes over here as well. First of all, for the div, let's type class name, and let's set it to absolute. And for the div over here, let's add a class name of relative, and here let's also add top of 4 and left of 4. So these are the positions. And if you go back here, we can see we have the badge. Let's also change the variant of the badge. So let's type variant to secondary. So here we can see we have a different type of badge. Let's also add some class names over here. So let's type class name. Let's set the BG background to 80. 80 is the opacity, and backdrop blur to excess. Right now, let's go ahead and add the card content. So let's go outside the card header, and let's type card content. So these are all coming from Shadcn. So in this card content, we will add the date first of all. So here we can see we have the date. So let's create a div, and in that let's type post.date, and let's also add a calendar icon over here. So let's go ahead and type calendar, and let's import it from Lucid React, and let's also add some class names over here for the calendar icon. So let's type class name h4, width of 4, and margin right of 2. So here we can see we have the calendar icon. Now these two should be one next to the other. So let's go to the div, and let's type class name flex, items center, text of small, text color to muted foreground, margin bottom of 3. And for the card content, let's add class name, and let's set the padding to 6. So this is how it looks. Right now, the next thing we will do is get the title and display it over here. So let's go outside this div. Let's create an S3, and let's type post.title, and let's add some class names over here. So let's type text XL, font serif. Let's also set the font weight to bold, and let's type text foreground, which is the color of the text, and let's type margin bottom of 3. Let's type group hover colon text primary. So when we hover over this, we need to have the text color change to primary, and let's also add a transition for the colors, and let's type duration of 300. So now if you go back, and if I hover over this, we can see that the color changes to the primary color. Right now, let's create the excerpt. So let's go outside the S3, let's create a paragraph, and let's type post.excerpt, and let's add some classes over here. So let's type text muted foreground. For the text color, let's type margin bottom of 4, line clamp of 3. So now we can see we have the excerpt being displayed over here. Now the next thing we need to have is this read more button over here. So let's go back. Let's go outside the paragraph. Let's create a div, and in that let's tap read more, and let's also add arrow right icon from Lucid React. Let's add some classes. So let's tap class name, and let's set it to margin left of 2, height of 4, width of 4, transition of transform, and let's tap group hover, and let's tap translate x1. So when you hover over this, it will move to the right side, the icon. So here we can see this is how it looks. And we also want the icon and the text to be one next to the other. So let's go ahead and type class name inside the div, and let's tap flex, items center, text primary, font medium, and group hover, and here let's tap underline. So when we hover this, we need to have the underline. So this is how it looks right now. And here we can see we also have this error when we reload the page. So if I open this, we can see that each child in the list should have a key. So if you go back, here we can see that this is a list. We are using a map. So here for the Motion.dev, let's add a key. So let's tap key, and let's set it equal to post.id. Now let's also add animations over here for these cards. So here, let's go ahead and type initial, and the initial state should be opacity of 0, y of 20, and instead of animate, we will use while in view. So let's type while in view, and when the card is being displayed on the viewport, then we'll just go ahead and set the opacity to 1 and y to 0, and let's add transition, and let's set it equal to duration of 0.6, and let's also add a delay, and let's set the delay to index, which is the index of each of these posts, times 0.1. So it will have a little bit of delay between each of these posts when they are displayed. Now we are using while in view instead of animate because the featured section is below our hero section. So if we scroll up, we can see that if I reload this page, and if I do not use while in view, and if I just use animate, then if you scroll down, the animation will happen at the time the page is loaded, and if you scroll down, we cannot see the animation. But now we can see that the animation is being displayed even if we scroll down after some time, because the animation runs when the division is in the view. So if you scroll down, we can see that the animation is working when we scroll down. Now let's do the same for the heading and this paragraph. So if you scroll up, here we can see that we have animate over here. Let's change this to while in view. And now if you go back, and if I reload this page, and if I scroll down, we can see that the animation happens when we scroll down. So that's how it works. And we'll also make sure that it won't animate every time we go in and out of the viewport. So for that, we can just go ahead and add one more line over here, which is viewport. And here let's type once true. So this will happen only once. So if you go ahead and reload this page, and the animation will happen for the first time, but if you go ahead and go back to the element again, the animation doesn't happen. So let's do the same for these cards as well. So here, let's go ahead and type viewport once true, and now if you go ahead and reload this page, we have the animation for the first time. But if you scroll up and go down again, we can see that the animation doesn't happen. So with that, we have completed creating our featured post section of our website. Now before beginning with the categories section, let's add this custom scroll bar over here on the right side. So here we can see that matching the colors of our website, we have the same color over here on the right side for the scroll bar. So let's do the same thing in our website. So let's go back to the globals.css file, and let's scroll down, and here let's go ahead and create a comment. I'll just type custom scroll bar, and here let's go ahead and type : hyphen webkit hyphen scroll bar, and let's set the width to 8 pixels, and let's go ahead and type hyphen webkit hyphen scroll bar hyphen track, and for the track we will add a background color of var, and we have a color called secondary that we already created. And the next thing we will add is : hyphen webkit hyphen scroll bar thumb, And for the thumb, we will add a background color of var primary color, and we'll also add a border radius, and let's set it to 4 pixels. Now when you hover over this thumb, we need to change the opacity. So let's go back, and here let's type ::hyphen webkit hyphen scroll bar thumb :hover, and here let's tap background and var primary, and let's tap 0.8. so this will be the opacity. Now let's go back, and let's go ahead and restart our server. So just press Ctrl C and npm run dev, and let's go back and reload this page. And now we can see we have the correct color for the scroll bar. Right now let's start creating the categories section. So here we have all these categories. Now for the categories section, we need to have all the data for the category name and the number of posts, and also this icon. So for that we will use the data.ts file. So here inside the lib folder, we have created this file called data.ts, and this is where we are storing the featured posts. So let's also export one more constant, and let's call it categories. Let's set it equal to an array of objects. First we need to have the name, and we can type tech for the first one, and then we need to have the icon. So let's type icon, and what we can do over here is that we can get the SVG of the icon and paste the SVG code over here, and then we can use that in our component. So we can go ahead and use backticks, and what we need to do is we need to go to the Lucid React website. So here we can see I'm in lucid.dev, and we can get all the icons over here. So let's click on view all icons, and for the tech we have this icon right here. So let's search for code, and we can see this icon. So let's click on the icon, let's click on copy SVG, and let's paste it over here inside this backticks. And then the next thing we need to do is specify the count. So let's type 24 over here for the count. Now in this way you need to go ahead and enter all the categories over here inside this categories array. So I'll just quickly go ahead and do that. Alright, so I have added all the categories over here. Now let's go ahead and create a component, and let's call it categories section .tsx, and here let's go ahead and tap export default function categories section, and let's return a section. Let's tap categories section over here. Let's go back to the page.tsx file, and here let's type categories section. Let's import it from components. And now if we go back to our website, here we can see we have the categories section. Now the first thing we will do is we will create the heading and this paragraph. So I'll just copy this, and let's go back, and let's go to the categories section, and here inside this section let's create a div, and in the div let's create a Motion.dev. Before that, let's go ahead and import asterisk as motion from motion/react client, and here let's type Motion.dev, and let's create an h2, and let's type explore topics, and let's create a paragraph, and let's paste the text over here. Right now let's add some classes over here. So let's tap class name, and let's tap padding top and bottom of 20, padding left and right of 4, and for screens greater than smartphone, let's tap padding left and right of 6, and for larger screens, padding left and right of 8, and BG muted 30 opacity. So this is how it looks. Let's go ahead and add some classes for the div. So let's tap class name, max width of 7xl, mx auto to bring it to the center, and let's style the h2. So just tap class name, text 3xl, md text 4xl, font of serif, font bold, text color to foreground, margin bottom of 4. Let's also bring this to the center. So let's tap class name, text center, margin bottom of 16, and let's also style this paragraph. So here for the paragraph, let's go ahead and tap class name, let's set it to text large, text muted foreground, max width of 2xl, mx auto. Right now let's also add the animation. So let's go back, and here for the Motion.dev, let's go ahead and tap initial, and let's set the initial values to opacity 0, y of 20, and let's tap while in view, let's set the value to opacity 1 and y of 0. and let's tap transition. Let's set it to duration of 0.6, and let's also tap viewport so that the animation is displayed just once. So let's tap once, true. And now if you go back and if I reload this page, we have the animation, and if I scroll up and reload, and if you scroll down, we can see that the animation is being displayed. Right now, the next thing we need to do is we need to get all the categories and display them over here. So for that, let's go ahead and import the categories from the data. So let's tap import categories from libdata. Right now, let's create a const called all categories, and let's set it equal to categories. And later you can write the code to get the data from a database, and everything else over here inside the code remains the same. And here, let's go ahead and go outside the Motion.dev, and let's create a div. Let's give some classes. So let's type class name of grid. Grid calls 2 for small screens, and for medium and larger screens, let's type grid calls 3. We have 3 columns, and for larger screens, we will have grid calls 6, which is 6 columns, and let's add a gap of 4. And now let's go ahead and loop through all the categories. So let's tap curly braces, all categories dot map, and let's tap category. I'll just call each of the individual categories category, and let's also get the index. And here let's return a Motion.dev, and in this we'll also give it a key, and for the key let's type category.name because the name is a unique value. And let's also add the animations over here. So let's tap initial. Let's add the same animations. So I'll just copy all of these, and we'll just copy it over here, and we'll just make a small change. So here I'll just change the transition to add a delay. So here let's type delay of index times 0.1. So each of the categories will be displayed one after the other when the animation happens. So here inside this Motion.dev, let's go ahead and create a div, and in this div let's add a class name, and let's tap group. So we will use this class to hover over our elements later. And let's also add another class called cursor pointer. And in this division, let's go ahead and type div, and for this div let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type class name of bg card. So this will be the background color, so it is called card. And let's type rounded LG for rounded corners, and let's type padding of 6, text center, and when we hover over this we will have a shadow of large, and we'll add transition for all, and let's type duration 300, and for hover let's also change the scale to 105, and let's also type border, and for the border color let's type border 50. Now in this, let's go ahead and create another div for the icon. So let's add a class name of margin bottom of 4, and now let's go ahead and display the icon. So let's type div, and here let's type dangerously set inner HTML, and let's set it equal to underscore HTML, and let's set it equal to the category dot icon. And now if you go back, we can see that the categories are displayed over here, and we don't have the correct color for the background. We'll change that in a minute. Before that, let's go ahead and add the other elements. So let's go outside this div, and let's create an S3. Let's type category dot name, and let's go ahead and create a badge. So this is basically a Shadcn UI component, and the badge I'll just type category dot count, and let's add some class names over here. So let's type class name of font semi bold, text color to foreground, margin bottom of 2, group hover. So when we hover over this group, then we'll just go ahead and set the text color to primary. Let's add a transition, and let's set it for all the colors. So let's type transition colors, and let's set the duration to 300, and this is how it looks. Let's also add some styles for the badge. So here for the badge, let's add a variant, and let's set it to outline, and let's also add a class name, and let's set it to text access. And after the number, we need to add the text posts. So let's tap posts over here. Let's also style the icon, and we also need to bring it to the center. So here for the div, let's go ahead and type class name, and let's set it to width of 8, height of 8, mx auto, text primary. Let's tap group hover, and let's set it to scale 110, transition for the transform, and let's set the duration to 300. And let's go back, and here we can see all the icons are being displayed correctly. Now let's change the background color. So let's go back and let's go to the globals.css file. Now here for the root, we have the card color set to 100, which is the white color, and it is alright for the light theme. For the dark theme, let's go ahead and change the color over here. So let's change this value to 0.1371 and 0.036 and 258.5. And now let's go back and let's reload this page. Let's go ahead and restart our server, and let's go back to our website. Let's reload this page, and now we can see we have the correct color for all the elements, and we also have the hover effect and the animation working all right. So with that, we have completed creating the categories section of our website, and it is completely responsive. Now before going ahead with the code section, let's make a little optimization for the features section over here. So if you go back to our source code, and if you go to the features section, here we can see that we are using the img tag, and Nextjs gives us a more optimized tag called image. So let's go ahead and change this into an image tag. So I'll just type image, and let's import it from next image. Now if you save this and if I go back to our website, we can see that we have this error, and that's because we need to have a width and height property in our image tag. So here let's go ahead and add that. Now for the width and height, I'll just type fill so that it will fill up the full width and height of the parent division. So if you go back, and now we can see we have another error, which is we are using the images from pexels.com. So we need to tell Nextjs that this is where we are getting the images from, and for that we need to edit our Next.js config file. So let's go over here to Next.js config.ts file. So here we need to type images colon and remote patterns over here. In that we need to add an array, and here we need to type protocol, and let's set it to HTTPS, and also host name, let's set it to images.pexels.com. And now if you save this, if you go back to our website and reload, and now we can see we don't have any errors. And if you scroll down, the images are not being displayed over here. So let's go back and let's see what's the problem. We are adding this height of 48 for the image tag itself. What we need to do is we need to create a container division with a fixed height or width. So let's go ahead and create a div over here, and let's add this image inside this div, and let's cut width and height values from here, and let's paste it over here inside a class name, and let's also type relative. And now if you go back, we can see that the images are being displayed, so everything is working all right. Now let's go ahead and start with our code section. So first of all, we need to have the data. So let's go to the data.ts file, and we need to create a new const, and we need to export it, export const codes, and let's create an array of objects. And in this array of objects, we need to have the text, and here will be the code, and then we need to add the author down here. So I'll just go ahead and quickly fill in all these details. Right, so I have added all the codes and the authors over here. So now let's go to our components folder, and let's create a new component called codes section.tsx, and let's go ahead and type export default function, and let's call it codes section, and let's return a section, and let's go ahead and type codes over here. Let's go to our main page.tsx file, and let's import codes section over here. And here we can see we have the codes displayed. Now let's go back and let's start with our codes section. So let's add class name, and let's set it to padding top and bottom of 20, padding left and right of 4, and for bigger screens let's tap padding left and right of 6. For larger screens let's tap padding left and right of 8. And in this, let's go ahead and create a div, and let's add some class names over here. So let's type max width of 4xl and mx auto to bring it to the center. And in here, let's create a Motion.dev. So let's import it over here. So let's type import asterisk as motion from motion/react client, and here let's go ahead and type Motion.dev, and in this let's create a div, and in the div we will add the quote icon. So if you go back over here, we can see that we have this icon over here. So let's go ahead and type quote, and let's import it from Lucid React, and let's also add some classes over here for this icon. So let's type class name, and let's say to height of 12, width of 12, and text primary, and let's set the opacity to 30, and MX auto to bring it to the center, and margin bottom of 6. So here we have the quote icon. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and display a random quote. So let's create a function over here to get a random quote. So here I'll just go ahead and type const random quote equals, and we'll create a function called get random quote, and let's go ahead and create the function. So here let's go ahead and type const get random quote, and I will just get a random quote from the quotes inside our data.ts file. So let's type return quotes, and let's import it from libdata, and here let's type math.floor math.random asterisk quotes.length. So this will get a random value from 0 to the length of the number of quotes. So in this way we'll get a random quote index from the array, and we get that random value over here, and we are just using that over here to get the quote of that specific index. So in that way we are getting a random quote, and then we are storing that over here as random quote constant. Now let's go ahead and go outside the quote, and let's create a block quote element. In that we can add the quotes. So here let's go ahead and type double quotes, and in here let's type random quote dot text, and now let's go ahead and create an element called site. So this is an HTML element, and let's go ahead and type hyphen, and let's type random quote dot author. So this will give us the author. Right now let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name, let's type text 2XL, MD text 3XL, so for larger screens, and font serif, font medium, text foreground, leading relaxed. So this is basically the line height, and let's also add a margin bottom of 6. And now let's go ahead and add some styles to the site. So let's type class name, text LG, text foreground, font medium, and if you go back, this is how it looks. Let's also change the italic to non-italic. So let's type not italic, and let's go back, and this is how it looks. We also want to bring it to the center. So here for this motion.dev, let's go ahead and type class name text center. So now everything looks all right. Now let's go ahead and add the animation. So here for the motion.dev, let's go ahead and type initial, and let's set the value to opacity 0, y of 20, and let's type while in view. Let's type opacity of 1, y of 0. Let's type transition. Let's set the value to duration 0.6, and let's also type viewport once true to display the animation just once. And now if you go ahead and reload this page, we can see that everything looks all right, and with that we have a random quote displayed over here every time. Right here I'm in my source code, and let's go ahead and go to the components folder, and let's create a new file called footer.tsx, and here let's go ahead and type export default function footer, and let's go ahead and return a footer tag, and let's type footer over here. Let's go back to our page.tsx file, and let's add the footer over here. I will just add the footer in the layout.tsx file so that the footer is available on all the pages of our website. So here let's go outside the children, and let's import the footer from components footer. So now if you go back to our website, here we can see that footer is being displayed over here. Now let's go ahead and create the footer. So here let's go ahead and add a div over here, and here for the footer let's add some classes. So let's type class name, let's set the background to BG background, border top, and let's set the border color to border 50, and let's go ahead and add some classes to the div. So let's type class name, let's add a max width of 7XL, let's type MX auto to bring it to the center, and padding left and right of 4. For screens larger than smartphone, let's type padding left and right of 6, and for larger screens let's type padding left and right of 8, and padding top and bottom of 12. Now here we can see for the footer we have 3 columns, and for smaller screens we have 1 column. So let's go ahead and create another div over here, and let's add some class names. So let's type grid, and grid calls of 1 for smaller screens, and for medium and larger screens let's type grid calls of 3, and let's add a gap of 8. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to add the logo and this text and these icons. So for that, let's go ahead and create a div over here. I'll just add a comment. I'll just type brand, and here let's create a div, and in the div we will have an S3, and let's type resonance over here. Now in this S3 let's add some classes. So let's type text XL for larger font size and font serif, and let's type font bold, text foreground for the color, and margin bottom of 4. So this is how it looks. Right now let's add a paragraph, and let's copy this text from here and let's paste it over here, and let's add some classes right here. So let's type class name, text muted foreground, margin bottom of 4, and after that we need to add the icons. So let's go ahead and create a div over here. Now let's add a class over here for the div, and let's type display of flex and space x of 4, so we'll have space between the elements. Now in this div we need to add the icons, so we'll just go ahead and create a const at the top. So here let's go ahead and type const social links, and here we will add an array of objects. We will have the icon and the href and the label. So for the icon, first of all we'll get the Twitter icon from Lucid React, and for the href we need to add the link of our social media page. So I'll just type hash for now, and for the label let's go ahead and type Twitter. You can also add the latest icon of Twitter, which is X right now. For now I'll just keep Twitter, and then we have the next object, and let's type icon. Let's get the icon of GitHub from Lucid React, and let's go ahead and type href. Let's set it to hash, and let's type label, and we need to set the label to GitHub. And after that we need to have the LinkedIn icon. So let's type icon LinkedIn from Lucid React. Href will be hash and label will be LinkedIn. And then lastly we have Instagram. So let's type icon Instagram from Lucid React, href of hash and label of Instagram. Right now let's use this social links array. So let's scroll down, and here let's go ahead and type curly braces social links dot map, and for each of the link I'll just call it link, and let's create an arrow function over here, and let's type const icon, and the icon will be link dot icon, and let's go ahead and return a link. So let's get the link from next link, and in this link we need to add the icon and the label. So let's go ahead and type icon over here. Let's add the class name, and let's set it to h5 and width 5, and after that we need to add the label. So I'll just create a span for that. Let's type link label, and in this span let's add a class name of sr only. So this will be just for the screen readers, and it won't be displayed over here in our website. And we also need to add a key. So here for the link let's add a key, and let's set the key to link.label because it is unique, and let's also add an href, and let's set it to link.href, and let's type target underscore blank for opening it in a new tab, and let's type class name text muted foreground, and when you hover over this we'll set the text to foreground, and let's type transition colors and duration of 300. And let's go back to our website, and this is how it looks. We can see that all the icons are displayed over here. Right now the next thing we need to do is add the quick links over here. So let's create another div. So this is the div for the brand, and let's go outside this. Let's create a comment called quick links, and let's create a div, and in that we will have an h4, and let's type quick links over here, and let's go ahead and add some classes. So let's type font semi bold, text foreground, and margin bottom of 4. So here we have the quick links heading. Now for the quick links let's go ahead and add an array over here. So let's type const quick links, and here let's go ahead and type name home href / and let's create another object. Let's type name categories, and let's type href / categories, and let's add another one. So we have about. So let's type name about href about. Let's also add name contact, href contact, and let's also add name privacy policy. I'll just type privacy, and let's type href / privacy page. With that, we have added the quick links array. Now let's loop through the array and let's display it over here. So after this h4, let's go ahead and create a UL element, and let's add class name of space y2, and here let's go ahead and type curly braces quick links dot map, and let's type link for each of the links, and I'll just return a list item, and let's set the key to link dot name, and let's add an anchor tag. So let's use the link from Next.js, and here let's type link dot name, and here for the href, let's go ahead and type link dot href. Let's add some classes over here. So let's type class name text muted foreground, hover of text foreground, transition of colors, and duration of 300. So this is how the quick links look. Right now we need to add the next column, which is the newsletter column over here. So let's go back and let's go outside this div, and let's create a new comment. I'll just type newsletter, and let's create a div. Let's type h4, let's type stay updated. Let's add some class names over here. So font semi-bold, text foreground, and margin bottom of 4. Now let's create a paragraph, and let's copy this text from here, and let's paste it over here. Let's also add some classes. Let's type text muted foreground, margin bottom of 4. Right now we need to add the input and the button. So let's go ahead and create a div for that. And for this we will import the input from Shadcn. So let's go back to the Shadcn website, and let's search for input, and let's copy this command. Let's go back to our terminal, and let's paste it over here. So we have added the input. Now let's go ahead and type input. So we are getting it from UI input. So if you go back over here, we can see that we have the input displayed over here. Let's also add the type to email. Let's set the placeholder to your email, and let's create a button. So let's type button, and let's get this also from UI button, and here let's type subscribe, and we need to have the button on the right side of the input field. So here for the div, let's go ahead and type class name flex, and flex call for smaller screens, but for larger screens we need to have flex row. So these will be one next to the other, and let's add a gap of 2. So this is how it looks. Right now the last thing we need to do is add this copyright text over here at the bottom. So let's go outside this div right here, and here let's go ahead and create a div. In that we'll add a paragraph, and let's copy this text and let's paste it over here. Now for the year, I'll just go ahead and type curly braces new date dot get full year. So this will get the current year, and here we can see 2025 is displayed over here. And let's add some classes to the div. So let's type class name margin top of 12, padding top of 8, border top, border color to border 50 for the opacity, text center, text small, text muted foreground, and let's save this. Let's go back, and this is how it looks. So with that we have styled the footer of our website, and let's go to the light mode, and this is how it looks. Let's also take a look at the smaller screens, and here we can see on smaller screens we have everything one below the other. So everything is looking alright. So with that we have completed designing the complete homepage, except for one thing, which is this mobile nav menu over here. Now for the mobile navigation, we're going to use sheet from Shadcn. So let's go to the Shadcn website, and let's search for sheet, and let's open this. And here we can see this is the sheet, and if I click on open, we can see that we have this sheet opened over here on the right side. So let's implement this. The first thing we need to do is we need to install sheet from Shadcn. So I'll just copy this command, and let's go to our terminal, and let's paste it over here. And here we can see sheet has been added. Now this is how we can implement it. So we need to first of all import these elements from the sheet. So let's copy this, and let's go back to our source code, and here in the components let's create a new component called mobile navigation.tsx. and let's paste it over here. And then let's go ahead and export default function mobile navigation, and let's return a div for now. And let's go to our navigation component, and here let's add it just after this div. So here we have the theme toggle, and after this container div ends, let's go ahead and create a comment. I'll just type mobile nav, and here let's go ahead and type mobile navigation, and let's import it from the same folder. So now if you go back and if you go to our website, here we can see that mobile nav is being displayed over here. Now this mobile navigation should not be displayed on larger screens. So here for the mobile nav, let's go ahead and add some classes. So here for the div, let's type class name md hidden, and for smaller screens, let's type flex items center and space x4. And now we can see that the mobile nav is not being displayed, but if we decrease the width of the browser window, now we can see that it is being displayed over here. So now let's start styling this. Let's go back. Let's go to the Shadcn website, and here we can see we need to add a sheet. So let's copy this and let's add it over here. So I'll just paste it over here, and we also need to add the theme toggle button over here. Now we have already created the component called theme toggle, so let's import that right here inside the mobile navigation. So before the sheet, let's go ahead and type theme toggle. So now we can see we also have the theme toggle button displayed over here. Now here we can see that we have the open button, and if I click on that, we have the sheet displayed over here. So now let's go ahead and add an icon over here instead of this open text. So here inside the sheet, this is the sheet trigger, and here I'll just go ahead and type button, and in that I'll just type menu, and we need to import menu from Lucid React. So this is the icon, and for the button, let's go ahead and type variant, and let's set it to ghost, and let's set the size of the button to icon. And for the menu, let's go ahead and type class name h5 and w5, and after that we have the sheet content, and then we also have the sheet header, and we don't need the sheet header, so I'll just delete sheet header from here, and let's simply go ahead and create a div, and in that we'll just go ahead and loop through our nav items. So let's type nav items, and we have that inside lib constants, so let's import that, and let's type dot map, and for each of the item I'll just call it item, and let's return a link. So let's type link, and let's get it from next link. Now in this link we need to go ahead and type item dot name. So if we go back to nav items, we can see that we have the name and the href. So we are just simply using this array of objects, and then for the link, let's also add a key. Let's set the key to item dot name, and let's add an href, and let's set it to item dot href. And now let's go ahead and add some classes. So here for the div, let's go ahead and type class name. Let's set it to flex call space y4 and margin top of 8 and padding of 8. Now if you go back over here, we can see that we have this error, and if I open that, we can see that it says in HTML button cannot be a descendant of a button. So here we can see that this is also considered a button. So here we need to type as child, and now this error goes away. Right now if I click on this button, we can see that it is being displayed over here, but we also have this error, and if I open that, we can see that dialog content requires a dialog title for the component to be accessible for screen readers. So for that, what you have to do is here you need to add a sheet title, and now if I go ahead and click on this, we don't have any errors. So with that, we have created the mobile navigation. Let's also add some classes to the link. So here for the link, let's go ahead and add class name. Let's type text LG, font medium, text foreground, hover text primary, and transition colors, duration of 200, and this is how it looks. Now I'll just go ahead and create a simple page over here for about. So let's type about / page.tsx. So it will create a folder called about and a page.tsx file inside that. Let's type export default function about page, and let's type return about page over here. And now if you go ahead and click on the about button, let's see what happens. We can see that we go to the about page, but this sheet doesn't fold. So we need to add the functionality for that as well. So if I go to the home page, we are being redirected to the home page, but this nav menu should close. So for that, let's go back over here and inside the mobile navigation, let's change this into a use client. And let's remove these unused imports from here. And now here, let's go ahead and create a state called isOpen, and let's type set isOpen, and let's set it equal to use state, and let's import it from React. And by default, we'll set it to false. And what we're going to do is for the sheet, we're going to type open, and it'll be open if isOpen is true. And we also have one more thing called onOpen change, and we need to set it to set isOpen. And now here for the links, we need to add an onClick. So here, let's go ahead and type onClick, and let's type set isOpen, and we need to set it to false. So when we click on any of these links, we need to set the isOpen state to false, which will trigger closing the sheet. So now let's go ahead and save this. Let's go back to our web page. Let's click on this, and let's click on about, and we can see that the sheet closes. So everything is working perfectly. Now the spacing between the theme toggle and the button is not correct. So let's go back to our source code. And here we have a typo. We need to type space. And now we can see everything looks all right. So with that, we have completed creating our Next.js blog homepage. So now in this video, I'll show you how to host this online. So we'll deploy this website on a platform called Vercel. So let's get started. Now before deploying, let's go ahead and build our project, and let's see whether we have any errors. So right now we can see that we have this console log. So let's remove that first of all. Now these are basically the featured posts. So let's open featured posts. And here we have the console log. I'll just delete that. And let's rerun our application. And now we can see everything looks all right. Let's reload this page, and everything is working all right. So let's go ahead and build this project, and let's see whether we have any errors. So just press Ctrl C to stop the server, and let's type npm run build, and let's press enter. We can see that the build process has started. Now we can see we have some errors over here. So the first one is inside the quotes section, and we have double quotes, and we need to escape the character. So let's go to the quotes section, and here we have the double quotes. Now here, let's try whether it works if I just type curly braces, and let's add backticks over here. And here, let's type $symbol random quote text. Let's see whether we have the error now. So I'll just build it again. But now we can see that we don't have any errors, and we are able to build successfully. So now let's see how to deploy this online. So the first thing we need to do is create a new repository. So just go to our GitHub account and click on create new, and click on new repository. And I'll just call it next blog, and just keep it public. You can also make it private. And let's go ahead and click on create repository. And here we can see we have some commands that we need to execute. So first of all, we need to git init. And now we can see that git is initialized. So we can see all these green colored text over here. And after that, we need to add all the files. So let's type git add dot. And now if we type git status, we can see that all these new files are ready to be committed. So we can just go ahead and copy these commands from here, and let's paste it right here. And if you have this password pop up, you can just go ahead and enter your password. And now we can see that our project is pushed to GitHub. So let's go back and let's reload. And here we can see that our project is pushed to GitHub. And now we can use this repository to add it to our Vercel. So you can just go over here to vercel.com and create a free account. You can also log in with your GitHub account. And then you can just go to the dashboard and click on add new, and click on project. And here you have to enter the name of the project. So it is next blog. So let's type next blog over here. Now here it says next blog cannot be found. So I'll just go ahead and configure my GitHub. I just log into my GitHub account. And now here you have to go ahead and select the repository. So I'll just select next blog from here. And let's click on this repository. And let's click on save. And now we can see that next blog is displayed over here. So let's click on import. And here we can see that it has already detected that it is a Next.js project. And if you have any environment variables, you can add them over here. We don't have any, so let's go ahead and click on deploy. And here we can see that the process has started. You can also click on this to look at all the logs. And here we can see our project was just deployed. And here we have some options. We can also add a custom domain. But for now, let's go ahead and click on continue to dashboard. And this is our dashboard. So let's go ahead and click on this domain, or you can also click over here. And here we can see our website is displayed over here and it is deployed successfully. And the hover effects and all those things are working correctly. Let's take a look at the dark version, and this is also working fine. Let's take a look at the smaller versions. So let's reduce the width of the browser window. And this is how it will look on tablets. And this is how it will look on smartphones. So everything is working correctly. Let's open the about page, and it is also working. So that's basically how you can deploy your Next.js projects on Vercel for free. Now here you can go to settings, and if you go to domains, we can go ahead and edit the domain. If I click on edit, we can see that we have this option. We can add whatever name we want over here. So I'll just type GTCoding next blog.vercel.app. Let's click on save, and I can remove the old domain. Let's click on save. So now this is our domain, and if I click on this, we can see that our website is displayed over here. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.